So yeah, yesterday we drove to Neuse Correctional, which is about an hour outside of Raleigh. And we went there because when we went there originally back in April, it was the site of the largest outbreak of COVID in our state was at Neuse Correctional. And we have been receiving lots of phone calls, requests for assistance, and we felt like it was important for them to know that we saw them, we heard them, we knew how desperate they were for attention, and we wanted them to know that they had our attention. And so when we went, we had a caravan of about, 20 cars maybe, and it was probably about 4 o'clock on a Friday, and well, no, it was about 5 o'clock on a Friday, and the entire law enforcement for the entire county, Wayne County, came out to stop us. They blocked the caravan in the front and they blocked the caravan in the back, and said that we were blocking traffic, but they were blocking us, right? And so we knew that us coming to Wayne County on a Friday was already risky, but some people in our caravan were still involved with the criminal legal system. They still were tethered to that system via probation or parole, and so we were aware of the danger, but it was also well worth the risk, right? And so we got there, we stirred it up, we put body bags on the lawn to represent the people who had died. The people who came to their windows were beating on their windows. They were putting hearts in the windows. And so we actually broadcast in onto a dead airspace. So we had a radio broadcast where we broadcasted into them to tell them why we were there. Because what we know happens inside of carceral facilities is that the staff will lie to them and say, oh, they're not here for you. That's not for you. They're here for something else, right? And because they have limited access to information, whether it be the limited access to the news, the newspaper, phone calls are pricely, not having access just to information causes a lot of misinformation and disinformation to get spread very quickly. So we wanted to be sure that they heard it directly from us that, no, we are here for you. We love you, we care about you, and we have not forgotten about you. And so that was important in April, but it was also important yesterday to remind them that just because we came in April and you didn't see us anymore for a few months doesn't mean that the work stopped. It just means that we weren't coming there every week, but we were still working, right? And we wanted them to know that. So when we saw them yesterday, it was 7:30 in the morning, and here they were already attending their rec for the day. And some people were in their cages, wrecking in a cage. So some people didn't have the ability to walk around the yard. They had to wreck inside of a cage and get their vitamin D and any exercise that they wanted. But they erupted, as Daniel stated earlier, when they realized that we were there for them. But we also saw the opposite of that. We saw prison staff being very concerned with just 5 cars, y'all. Prison staff were very concerned about us. They backed up aggressively to try to get our faces. They were recording. Just all kinds of things, right? So it's important that we continue to show love, radical love, to people who are incarcerated, because we know that the system does everything it can to disconnect them from their own humanity, to disempower them, to dehumanize them, to demoralize them, and to make them feel unworthy. And so our work is to show them that they are loved, but it's also to show Governor Cooper that they are loved. On May 31st, he said that Black lives, let me be clear, Black lives do matter. And what we are saying is if Black lives matter, then we have to know that they matter inside of jails and prisons and other carceral facilities as well. That those folks who are inside of cages are still in carceral facilities, are still North Carolinians. Their status doesn't change because of their location. They are still worthy of dignity, they are still worthy of love, and they are still worthy of our care and concern. And so that's why we are out here every day until January 1st from sunrise to sunset, and we will continue to be here no matter the response from Governor Cooper. If we have a positive response tomorrow, we're still going to be here to January 1st. If we get a negative response, we're still going to be here to January 1st, because redemption is necessary. Accountability is necessary. Transparency is necessary. All of those things have to be available if we're going to have justice. Those are the ingredients of justice, and many more, right? And so that's why we're out here, and that's why we'll continue to be out here.
And I'm going back to Pastor Conder's sermon. You you mentioned having been a guest of Governor Cooper, and I think what struck me yesterday in Christie's message is, we are asking for bold, urgent courage. And it's not just sort of like the idea of mercy. Partially it is mercy, but Governor Cooper has been a state representative, a state senator, an attorney general, and a governor for 34 years now. And so he has been an actor in this system that has contributed to mass incarceration. And so there's also, as Christy said, a duty. But we also think there is a goodness there, and I'm looking around. I think that we're hopeful that he will take action. We hope, yeah. And so, just what would you say is, what would you counsel somebody who's looking at a hard decision that is very tough in these times that are so politically divided?
Yeah, there's no substitute for courage. You cannot, if you can't act in courage, then you cannot act in other arenas. I mean, you think about the less kind of explosive arenas of life outside of the justice system, whether it's economics or whatever. It requires courage, and it requires a moral platform, a moral vision to act. I mean, what's largely broken in our society is we at times lack this vision of, for example, with incarceration, we see people who are incarcerated not as neighbors, not as friends, not as family members. I'm doing work currently in affordable housing and other areas. These are common threads of life. And so that's been, my plea to those who know the criminal justice system. They know how entirely broken it is, and it is going to take courage. It's going to take people being willing to act outside of the common norms of assumptions. So,
yeah. And what do you think? I know a lot of your work has to do with community. How would you advise somebody to draw on community? And really a point I made yesterday was, I think that we should understand that Governor Cooper's instincts are bad on this, and we shouldn't expect everybody to get it. But I do expect for an elected official to understand where their holes are, where their blind spots are. And that's wisdom, is to know when you need to defer your power and lend your power to people who are more informed and closer to the issue. And so that's really what I expect. Like, I don't expect, everybody's racist. Everybody has, we're not expecting him to be a perfect person, but I guess that's my question, is how do you draw on community in using your power in a courageous way?
Well, one thing I want to say, this is a little bit of a tangent, but the most radical thing one can do is come close to another person. Because if you choose to come close to another person, you are going to be impacted by their values, their stories, and their experiences. And I think that's largely why you've got deputies blocking your caravan, right? They don't want you to be close. They do not want people to see what's going on. And people in power, one of the advantages of power is you have access. You have the opportunity to come close to whoever you want to. You have the opportunity to hear from people who are incarcerated. You have the opportunity to hear from activists. You have the opportunity to hear a different narrative. And there are all kinds of stories out there. There are all kinds of narratives that, like one I mentioned today, is this mythology that people who are in the criminal justice system are others. They are not people worthy of treatment. And for Governor Cooper, he doesn't have to act alone, because who he chooses to come here is the stories that he's going to hear. And he's been an insider as a district attorney. He knows what works and what doesn't work in our system. So that's another, maybe even an incremental act toward change, is listening to stories, hearing the stories of prisoners, hearing the story of people who are doing what you guys are doing. So Daniel, I may have lost your question, but that was on my mind. Let's come near people who have been affected by what's going on in criminal justice.